Hi, and welcome to Building with Barry, Habitat Buffalo's how-to video series that empowers families to care for their own homes. I'm Barry Weiss. So today we're going to be talking about the house's heating system, specifically the furnace. Now I'm recording this on September 1st, and while it's still warm out, right now is a really appropriate time for us to start thinking about how to maintain the furnace and get everything operational so that we don't have to worry about any issues when we get into the middle of heating season. The first thing we're going to talk about is when to have a licensed heating contractor come and inspect your furnace and your heating system. We're then going to go over how to change your furnace filter. And lastly, I'll talk about a few tips on how to keep your heating costs low and make sure that you're getting the longest life possible out of your furnace. Before we get started, I want to go over a few of the tools and materials you'll need for working on your furnace here. And it's very limited. We just want to make sure that we have the appropriate furnace filter, which we'll go over in a minute. We want to make sure that we have a vacuum cleaner, or in this case, a battery-powered shop vac, and some cleaning tools to make sure that everything is looking nice and clean. Lastly, and I'll explain this in a second, I want to have a Sharpie with me. You can see in the back here, so I'm in a construction site right now. You can see a lot of debris here. Also, your furnace is typically located in the basement, so it will collect dirt and dust, and we want to make sure the first thing we do before we really get into this is clean up our work area. So I'm going to do that first. All right, I'm going handheld so we can talk about a few of the parts and components of your furnace. The first that you'll see on every furnace is a switch here. Sometimes there's an outlet, sometimes there's not, but you'll see a switch, and that's just to turn power on and off to the furnace itself. You can see plugged in here, we have this guy right here, which is called a condensate pump. And that just takes moisture and condensation that accumulates inside the furnace from hot air and cool air meeting and pumps it away from the furnace so that the furnace can function properly. Our furnaces at Habitat are gas powered, and so right here we have the gas line and the shutoff to the gas. You always want to make sure for the furnace to be on and gas to be flowing, this shutoff right here should be pointing in the direction of the pipe. If we turn it sideways, now the gas is off and we won't be able to operate our furnace properly. Next, we have a couple pipes coming up out of the furnace itself, and these are the intake and exhaust pipes, and they actually go up and to the outside of the house. And one brings fresh air in to feed the furnace, and the other brings exhaust fumes out and away from the house. Okay, right here is the furnace itself, and this is where cool air gets heated to become hot air that's then blown throughout the house. We have our return, a cold air return plenum, which brings the cold air that has already exhausted all of its heat from the rest of the house and brings it to the furnace. And then we have our supply plenum right here, which takes all of the heated air and pumps it and blows it into the house. And then lastly, we have our furnace filter right here. And we will talk about that in a little bit. Okay, the last bit of background so that we understand why we're doing the things we're doing to maintain our furnace is the very basics of how a furnace works. And really, it is basic. Inside the furnace, which is just off screen here, we have a heat source, which is, in this case, a burner that burns gas and makes a flame. And we have a big fan. And we have ducts that the fan blows the heated air out to the house through a series of ducts and heats all the rooms. And then we have another series of ducts that bring the cold air back into the furnace to be heated. And so it's a big, big cycle. And the one component that is probably more crucial than any in this whole system that we have control over is the furnace filter, because it takes all that cold air that has all the dust and particles from the house and it blows it through a filter so the filter can remove those particles instead of having them get jumbled up inside all of the mechanics of the furnace. So even though I said it's very basic, there are a lot of moving parts and pieces and computers and things like that inside of the furnace. And so it's important to have an expert come and inspect our furnace periodically to make sure that it's functioning properly and that they catch anything that needs to be fixed before it gets worse or before it's too late and we have to replace the whole system. So the rule of thumb is that with a new furnace, and every Habitat home starts off with a brand new furnace, including the one right behind me, call a licensed heating professional to inspect your furnace every 2 years. And after the first 10 years, once that furnace is 10 years old, or if you don't know how old it is, call a licensed heating professional to come and look at it every year so that you can get the maximum lifetime out of it and so that it can work as efficiently as possible. In addition to regular annual or biannual maintenance, you'll also want to make sure that if you ever hear anything that sounds concerning, like a rattle or like something really working too hard or grinding or making a noise that just sounds wrong, or the heat isn't being pumped into the house, you should also call a heating professional so that they can come and take a look at the system and fix anything that might be wrong. So as I said before, cold air gets brought through this return plenum and it gets pushed through a filter, which is this right here, and over into the furnace itself where it gets heated and then recirculated into the house. So this is where all of the dust that's coming from the rest of the house will get removed from that air so that we have clean air getting heated and blown into the house. Your furnace filter needs to be replaced every month during heating season. And heating season is just when the temperatures get cold enough that you're regularly using your furnace. Typically in Buffalo, it's about September or October, all the way usually through May, depending on the year and depending on your comfort preference. So anyway, we want to make sure that we know which size of a filter we need and have them on hand. There's no reason that you can't just have all 6 or 8 that you're going to need for the season at the beginning of the season, and you actually can purchase them cheaper in bulk. Now, before I show you the very simple process of changing out your furnace filter, I do want to make sure that I'm not getting any extra dust or dirt into our system when I remove this. And I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but there's a bunch of dust above the filter and actually on the floor below it. So I'm just going to vacuum really quickly and make sure that we have a clean work area again. Okay, I'm ready to change out the filter, but the first thing I want to do is make sure that the furnace doesn't start kicking on when I have the filter removed. Otherwise, we have unfiltered air going into the furnace. So I'm just going to turn it off really quickly. Okay, so we are ready to remove our old filter and replace it with a fresh one. So the first thing I'm going to do is this just slides out right on a track, nice and easy. And I want to show you a couple markings on the face of this, if I can get the angle there. First, you'll see a series of numbers, and those are the dimensions of the furnace. It's the thickness by the length by the width. So this filter is one of the most common sizes, and it is 1 inch by 25 inches by 16 inches. That might be backwards based on how I'm looking at the camera. The other thing you're going to see, and this is important as well, is airflow and then an arrow pointing in a certain direction. Now this is where our Sharpie comes in. The airflow for a furnace always goes down through the supply, through the filter, and into the furnace. And so take your Sharpie, and if you don't already have a marking on your furnace, we're going to write air flow, and then an arrow pointing towards the filter and towards the furnace. And that way we will never put the filter in the wrong orientation. So same thing on the side here, we have the arrow. This arrow should point the same direction as that arrow so that the filter is working properly. So I've got a brand new filter here, and you can see from the markings that is the exact same dimensions as the old filter. And just by the way, there's nothing wrong with this filter. It's perfectly clean. It was just replaced. But for the sake of this video, we're going to put in a brand new one. So this just has plastic on it that we remove and dispose of properly. I'm just going to throw it off screen. And you can see that we also have the, let's see if we can get it on there. It's tough to get that there. The airflow arrow. And we're going to make sure that we put this in with the airflow arrow in the proper orientation. Slide it right in. Put it in all the way to the end so that air can't get around it. And that's as simple as it is to replace your furnace filter. Okay, story time. As construction manager with Habitat for 5 years, I was responsible for performing work orders, and I lost count of the amount of times that I had to respond to people with sometimes major issues with their furnaces. The first question I ask is, when was the last time you changed your furnace filter? And inevitably the answer is, it's been a few months. I never have changed my furnace filter. And that is the #1 cause in my experience of people having problems with their furnace that could have totally been avoided. So whatever it takes to remember to change your filter every month, just do it. Set a reminder in your phone. Do it the same day of the month. Today's September 1st that I'm recording this, perfect example of when to remember to do some of these things that we need to do every month. Whatever it takes, buy in bulk so that they're always just sitting there so you don't walk by and think, I got to do that later, but next time I'm out I'll pick up a furnace filter. Just buy a bunch of them and have them right next to the furnace so that it doesn't become a hassle, and you can get years and years and years out of your furnace that you might not otherwise if it has to overwork itself trying to pull air through a soggy filter. So a few additional tips and pointers for keeping your heating system as efficient as possible and getting the longest life out of it that you can is to, there's a few things. So first of all, like I said before, make sure you're changing your filter regularly. We have these 2 intake and exhaust pipes that go to the outside of the house. Those will be pointed out to Habitat homeowners when you do your walkthrough, but you can typically find them. They're right next to each other, and they're 2-inch PVC, which is just white plastic. Make sure that those are clear of any obstructions. In fact, any vent that comes through the side of your house, make sure that it's clean, clear of obstruction. If it's low to the ground and we get a heavy snowstorm, make sure that it's cleared off. That will help your system run smoothly and efficiently. The other thing is our ducts in our house, which are the pipes that carry all the heated air to the bedrooms and the living room and the conditioned spaces of the house. And then also the ones that bring the cold air back. They will accumulate dust and dirt over time. And so every few years it is recommended that you also pay to have the ducts cleaned by a professional duct cleaning service. There are a lot of heating contractors who do that work, as well as indoor air quality professionals. And it's a good investment to make sure that you're getting those few extra years out of your furnace that you might not otherwise if it's working too hard to pump air through clogged up ducts. So this wouldn't be a true furnace and heating system maintenance and care video if I didn't at least mention this guy right here. This is the thermostat. At its very basic, what it does is you set the temperature you want the house to be, and the thermostat will turn the furnace on when the temperature dips below that, and then turn it back off once it hits the temperature you want. You can program this so that it turns on at certain intervals that are pre-programmed during the day. It would take way too long in this video for me to explain that, and there are probably better videos that exist for your specific model if you just do an internet search for thermostat programming. But just wanted to mention that this is a way, especially if you program it, to have control over the efficiency and the comfort level of your heating system in your home. Look, we live in Buffalo. It gets cold in the winter. So having safe and reliable heat is not just an issue of comfort, it's an issue of safety and livability. So hopefully with the tips and the maintenance and care guidelines that were provided in this video, you'll be able to have a reliable furnace and heating system for years and years to come. Thank you for spending time with me in another Building with Barry episode. There is so much more information on not just your furnace, but your entire house and how to properly care and maintain it in our homeowner handbook, which is now on our website at habitatbuffalo.org. So check that out. We will see you on the next one. Like and subscribe. Can you say that? Change your filter. Change your filter.
Change my filter.